Holeman and Finch in Atlanta is a well-reviewed and popular restaurant that is most famous for their burger. Many have called it not only the best burger in the city, but one of the best in the country. At one time, however, it was nearly impossible to get, as only a limited number were made each night, and one could only order it at 10 p.m. Today, thankfully, the burger is far easier to acquire, and I just had to try it.
Today I'm here in the fine city of Atlanta, Georgia. I'm continuing my trip. I'm having a great time, but tonight is going to be very exciting because I'll be having one of the burgers that's been on my bucket list for years. I'll be going to the restaurant known as Holeman and Finch to try their legendary burger. The burger has not only received numerous accolades and praise, it is also known as being quite difficult to acquire, at least in the past. At one point, the restaurant only served their burger at 10 p.m. and they only served 24 offerings, and considering its reputation, it became quite difficult to get. Luckily, the restaurant has changed for the better and one can get the burger pretty much at any time of the day. I learned about the burger for the first time, I believe, on some of those travel shows. It's been featured on a number of them, and since then I've always wanted to try it, and tonight I'm gonna make my burger dream come true. With that being said, it has now started to rain, so let's head to the restaurant and have a burger.
Holeman and Finch is located in the Colony Square complex in the Midtown area of Atlanta. However, the restaurant wasn't always situated there. Originally, Holeman and Finch called the South Buckhead area of the city home when it opened in 2008. It soon gained a popular following, not just for its burger, but its entire menu, which featured whole animal cuisine. The original Holeman and Finch closed in 2020, and their planned move to Midtown was delayed by the pandemic, but finally their new home opened in 2023. While I would have loved to have gone to the original Holeman and Finch during its heyday, I was still incredibly excited to dine at their new outpost and have their burger. I showed up to the restaurant at 6 p.m. for my reservation and was promptly seated. Once I was settled, I took in the space. Holeman and Finch is a warm and inviting, nice-looking restaurant with an eclectic mix of art and items that give the space some good character. The design aesthetic also rang true in the washroom, which even came equipped with some reading material. The new location of the restaurant is apparently twice the size of the original, and I must say it had a nice energy to it. Diving into the menu, I was of course going to get the burger, but I also wanted a full meal with an appetizer and dessert as well. Holeman and Finch serves a solid selection of gastropub fare with some southern classics in the mix. However, the old Holeman and Finch seemed to have a more interesting menu. In fact, there is even a section of it labeled as parts, which featured such tasty bits like brains, testicles, and tongue. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of brain, but at the same time, I wish that the present day menu had a bit more excitement to it, especially with regards to the appetizers. In terms of beverages, there's a decent selection of bottles of wine along with wine by the glass, beer, and cocktails. That night, I felt like getting a cocktail. I got the Spirit of 1840, which contained cognac, Cointreau, and lemon. Now that was a tasty drink. I love cognac, and I thought that creation was well balanced and a pure joy to indulge in. Before my appetizer, I was presented with a Parker House roll paired with pickles and some rustic-looking butter. The roll was very tasty, it was nice and fresh, and had a spot-on texture. The sprinkling of salt on top of the bread gave it an exciting pop, but it was the butter which took it to the next level. That butter was fantastic. It was so smooth and rich and absolutely packed with flavor. The pickles were a nice addition to the plate as they contributed a pleasant acidity and sourness. Soon enough, I was presented with my appetizer. I went with the fried Gulf oysters and pickles, which was paired with a red remoulade. Had I known that I was going to get a serving of pickles with my bread, I might have chosen something else, but nevertheless, I was excited to give it a go. I first squeezed a bit of the lemon over everything, and then I dove right in. My first bite was one of the pickles, and it proved to be a tasty delight. It was nicely fried with a flavorful breading. Then I gave the red remoulade a try by dipping in the pickles. That remoulade was wonderful. It proved to be a nice tangy accompaniment that paired well with not only the pickles, but the oysters as well. The oysters were the true highlight of that course. They had a delightful flavor and shared the same crispy breading as the pickles. Unfortunately, there were far more pickles in that dish than oysters, but I still really enjoyed that appetizer. After finishing, it was time for the main event, the Holeman and Finch cheeseburger, which was paired with a good heap of fries. That was indeed a good-looking plate of food. The burger had such an appetizing, mouth-watering look to it. I simply couldn't wait to try it. It's a burger that I've been lusting after for years, and I wasn't disappointed. It was spectacular. With that first bite, I was filled with happiness. That burger lived up to the hype. The creation consists of 2 patties of certified Angus and Hereford beef, onions, bread and butter pickles, and Kraft American cheese. On paper, it sounds like a fairly basic burger, and it is, but it was executed perfectly, and when it comes to burgers, simple is oftentimes the best. First, let's consider the beef. Holeman and Finch uses good beef indeed, but at the same time, it's no fancy, luxurious, dry-aged specimen like the burgers offered from Minetta Tavern and La Bee, but it still works. The patties were nicely seared and had a good char to them. They were also juicy and flavorful. I particularly liked the onions. They sort of melded together with the beef, almost like an Oklahoma fried onion burger. Plus, the onions lent a nice sweetness to the creation. The pickles did their job as well, imparting a nice acidity that was supremely balanced with all the other components of the burger. Then there's the cheese. Holeman and Finch uses Kraft American cheese. I actually know of a lot of restaurants that do the same thing, but none of them would dare print the word Kraft on their menus. Despite the fact that what Holeman and Finch did would make a French cheesemonger cry, the cheese works perfectly on their cheeseburgers. It has the right level of gooiness to it as it hugs the beef in the most perfect way. Finally, there's the bun, which was fresh, flavorful, and nicely toasted. With everything combined, that was a phenomenal cheeseburger, and I was grateful to have it, especially since if I came to the restaurant during its early years, getting it would have been quite the challenge. Initially, the burger was limited to 24 offerings a night, and it was only available at 10 p.m. Over the years, the burger's availability has shifted, but thankfully, today, it's available all the time. In fact, one doesn't even have to go to Holeman and Finch to get the burger, as the restaurant opened a sort of spin-off called H&F Burger that is devoted to selling mainly the Holeman and Finch burger. There are multiple locations of the restaurant, and the burger is actually a bit cheaper compared to Holeman and Finch, even though I think the $24 price tag at Holeman and Finch isn't bad at all. Regardless of where one gets the burger, I'm just glad that it's as accessible as it is because it's incredible. Out of 10, I would give the Holeman and Finch burger an 8.9. Besides the burger, there were also fries on the plate, and those were some good fries. They had a great flavor, a spot-on texture, and were well seasoned. There were also a couple of condiments included, which were welcomed. For me, fries are the ideal side to pair with a burger, and combined with Holeman and Finch's offering, that was one hell of a satisfying plate of food. After finishing, it was on to dessert. There were a few dessert options, and they all sounded pretty good to me. I decided to go with the sticky toffee pudding with vanilla ice cream. It was a good-looking, rustic, comforting serving that I was eager to try, and I was thoroughly satisfied. That sticky toffee pudding was on point. The cake portion of the dish was gooey and moist with a delightful, well-balanced flavor. The vanilla ice cream was a nice contrast to the warm cake and helped cut through the sweetness. Overall, that was a great sticky toffee pudding and a positive note to end my dinner on. After finishing, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $77.80, but with my tip, I spent about $93, which I thought was pretty good value, especially compared to what I'm used to back in New York City. My dinner at Holeman and Finch was certainly a good one.
So that was one hell of a burger and a fine meal overall. I really enjoyed myself. Right now I'm back in my hotel, and it's actually the day after my dinner at Holeman and Finch. I just didn't really have time last night to do any sort of wrap up. that burger lived up to the hype. It was incredible. Now, there was nothing complex or fancy about it, but it literally had everything that one could want with a burger. I am so glad that the restaurant no longer offers the burger only at 10 p.m. in a limited quantity, but if they still did that, I would wait for it because it is that good. Besides the burger, I also really enjoyed Holeman and Finch in general. Even if one isn't after a burger, I still think Holeman and Finch is a restaurant worth going to. I really like their menu, and there are a number of courses on that menu that I would love to try in the future. Although, and like I said, I still wish there was a bit more variety in terms of appetizers, but at the same time, their selection is still pretty solid. To sum it up, the burger at Holeman and Finch is spectacular. It is a destination-worthy burger. After I realized I was going to take this trip to Atlanta, that burger from Holeman and Finch was one of the first things that came to mind, and I'm so happy that I'm able to cross it off my bucket list. In conclusion, that burger was amazing, and my trip certainly ended on a high note because tomorrow I fly back to NYC. My time here in Atlanta has been spectacular, and I hope to one day return.